So, Jack, does it stand for chronic halitosis, unendingly dirty?
I think it stands for chubby, handsome, urbane dandy.
So, where I come from, I'm pretty sure it's crazy high on uncut dope.
No, I think it's coffee helps undertake the day.
Well, I do like that one, but lately I think I've been more in the contagious hope for unlimited donuts zone.
I've been in the charismatic hairdo, unbelievably dapper.
I think you're always there, but if I really get down to the nuts and bolts of this, I think it's complex heuristic understanding of development.
It's not coquettish harlots unabashedly dancing.
Wait, no. I'm pretty sure I know what it is. I saw an article about this the other day. I think it stands for Contamination Hazard Urban Disposal.
That does sound very familiar, but I'm pretty sure it's cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwell. Oh God! Oh, the glowing eyes! Oh, my neck! Oh, they're killing me! Oh, it's pain. I'm dead. I'm dying. Cue Foley sounds. I'm Jack, and I'm joined by Stephanie, and whatever
Hello.
those letters stand for. We are the Horrible Idea, and we are talking about 1984's Chud. Stephanie, tell us some facts about this movie.
Yeah. So, Chud was released on the 31st of August, 1984, directed by Douglas Cheek, who really had a lot of cheek in making this movie.
It's pretty cheeky.
The screenplay was by Parnell Hall and Shepard Abbott, and I did notice on IMDb that Daniel Stern and Christopher Curry are listed as uncredited writers, so I think they probably did a punch-up on this script,
Yeah, maybe
such
it was
as it
just
is.
a little yes and on stage. The budget was $1.25 million, which was all dirty T-shirts. The box office was 4.6 domestic. IMDb gave it a 5.6 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes critics, 29. And Rotten Tomatoes audience, a 33.
Pretty low.
Sleeper. It's a sleeper.
Yeah. I did do a listener poll. It got 100% bad rating.
Wow.
Against a good bad rating. Although, just as a sidebar, one of my friends said it is one of his favorite movies. So
Yeah.
there you go.
It definitely teetered. It teetered between good, bad, and bad for me.
Yeah, we were texting, peek behind the curtain. We were texting during part of this, and I was at the stage of the movie where I was like, this movie rules. And you
Yeah.
were like, snooze. I don't know.
Yeah, it drags a little bit. Couple of bits of trivia. You want to start?
Yeah, so I was delighted and surprised to see John Goodman here.
Yeah, it came out of nowhere.
In a very bit part.
Yeah.
He's just like a cop in a diner. He gets killed off screen. It's, he's got a nice little blonde, like almost mini mullet. And at first I was like, is that him? And then as soon as he started talking, I was like, oh yeah, you know that voice.
Yeah. And his partner, who you weren't familiar with, was played by Jay Thomas, who's another kind of comedian, and he became a radio host later and then died very suddenly a couple of years ago. But yeah, these two kind of like big names from the 90s just like popping up.
Yeah. I think this was like John Goodman's like third or fourth film role. Also, a little bit of trivia. On April 1st, 2011, the Criterion Collection, those jokesters over at the Criterion Collection announced that Chud would be joining the prestigious collection, but this was an April Fool's joke.
What?
It did not join.
A thing I did not know that I found very interesting was, so Daniel Stern, who of course of Home Alone fame and City Slickers and lots of other things, was the voice of the narrator for all, I think, 119 episodes of The Wonder Years. I never put those together.
Wow. Yeah.
And
another Daniel Stern trivia that I forgot to mention earlier. The woman in the very first scene who's walking her dog and gets chudded is his wife.
Oh. Not
No.
Bosch's
Well,
wife.
in real life, the actress is
Right.
Daniel Stern's wife.
I have often gotten John Hurd confused with William Hurt. So I had some Big Chill facts, but they are no longer relevant. It always comes back to the Big Chill for me. Daniel Stern and John Hurd would work again together in a weird movie I like a lot called The Milagro Beanfield Wars, which was directed by Robert Redford. It's kind of a very, very early 90s, late 80s comedy.
Have never heard those words before.
But
to add to the
comedy.
trio, there's John Hurd, there's William Hurt, and then there's John Hurt.
Right.
John Hurt of Alien fame.
The 13th Doctor, yeah. The War Doctor. All right. Preconceptions. Had you heard of this?
I'd literally never heard of this. I picked it because it was on a list of like New York City horror or sci-fi movies.
Yeah, one of the rare...
and I liked the name.
Right. One of the rare Chelsea SoHo-based horror films.
Yeah, like I saw you wrote that in the plot breakdown, which we'll get to in just a second, but I just heard them mention Spring Street at some point, so I was like, wait, is this all happening in Soho?
Oh, I could totally tell because they did film, like, I used to work right over there. So, yeah, there are a couple little weird cobblestone streets over there that they filmed at.
Yeah.
I had definitely seen this probably on Channel 11 in New York, which is where I grew up. But it's always been around. And yeah, when you brought it up, I immediately said, Chud, I know what that stands for, and spoiled it for you. Sorry about that. But
it's okay because, spoiler alert, there's a second meaning that I didn't know.
Yeah.
And that was a surprise. So.
Well, that brings us to the plot breakdown.
In New York City, a number of people experiencing homelessness, most of whom have taken refuge underground in the sewers, have gone missing. In addition, Flora Bosch, wife of NYPD's Captain Bosch, has disappeared.
The photographer, George Cooper, has stopped his lucrative fashion photo career and started photographing the very same community that is going missing. Cooper, Bosch, and a man named the Reverend, who runs a local soup kitchen, investigate the disappearances. What they find are cannibalistic human underground dwellers, people mutated by toxic waste that was dumped in the sewers of Soho, who begin eating all that fall into their path. Hilarity ensues.
Yeah. This one had a lot of funny moments.
It did.
I was so surprised and pleased to see Daniel Stern in this. I know him mostly from Home Alone, but yeah, I had no idea what this movie was going to be, really. And I had a good time. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, it like a lot of early 80s horror films, it has some pacing issues. It's budget shows, There's some really, really weird acting choices. But it's all sort of fun. And,
yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen, or we will eventually get to the whole Toxic Avenger Trauma Pictures world. Are you familiar with that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is sort of has a foot in that world because, like, the monsters are just these sort of weird-looking mutants and glowing eyes. And
yeah, they looked, like, comical. Pretty much every time the, like, claws came around a manhole cover, I cracked up.
Yeah.
Because they just it looks like somebody found some like preacher gloves at the Halloween Spirit costume shop, and that is probably what happened. But they were just like gripping the little manhole cover. Anyway, every time I saw them, it was funny.
Did it bring up any questions do you have any questions for the Chud?
Oh, I have lots. I have several. So for one, does John Hurd really have what it takes to be a photojournalist? Because he's complaining about the fashion photography thing. He's like, oh, they're just selling their shitty perfume. But then when he goes down into the subway or the underground tunnels, he's like, do I really have to go further? And he's like complaining. And I'm like,
yeah, I don't get it.
Come on now.
I don't understand his motivation, and I don't think he does either.
He also has the weirdest I'm pregnant conversation with his girlfriend.
That whole conversation, yeah.
It was so weird. She's like, I'm pregnant. And he was like, you're having a baby.
Yeah.
And not at all like, and then it's very like, I was so confused because it seems sort of progressive where he's like, it's your body.
Right.
But he's also just completely not using any language that sounds like he's very just like whatever. What
that scene looked like to me was like John Hurd being a actually good actor who is well trained, who has no script whatsoever to work with. So he was just trying to do a lot of like face acting and sort of like, I guess I'm conflicted. I guess I'm, not sure what to expect, but I don't have any words to use in this case. So I'm just going to kind of look like have a face journey.
It was weird, but
yeah, similarly, so, the first thing that happens in the movie is Detective Bosch's wife gets chudded. She gets dragged into the sewer with her little dog. So we don't learn that that's his wife for a really long time. And he sort of like is acting totally like, well, one, he doesn't really want to investigate this in the beginning. And then when he finally sort of does start investigating, he never brings up that his wife is missing. And then
he brings it up, but it's like after some of the people who have been living in the sewers have gone missing.
Right.
And the people are like, oh, well, we're not investigating this. And then as like almost a piece of additional ammo, he's like, well, also my wife.
Yeah, it was like, oh, yeah, by the way. And then, spoiler alert, she dies. Well, they find her body. And
the dog body.
Yeah.
That was gross and unnecessary. But,
and then he sort of like has a 5-minute bender.
Yeah, that was weird. They're like, let's take you home. He's like, why? I got nothing to go home to. I don't know. It's some sort of like, he's in the belly of the beast or whatever.
It was not a good script is what I'm getting.
I will say the person in this movie that I felt was the most committed and gave the best performance was Daniel Stern.
Absolutely.
I think the whole scene when Bosch first goes to the soup kitchen, he's really good, and I felt like he read this weird, bland script in a very like convincing and sort of heartfelt way.
Yeah.
And he was also just covered in dirt. I didn't know why he was so dirty also, because he wasn't living in the subway.
That was my third question here. Everyone is dirty in this movie, and like it's maybe it's like a design choice. Like everyone's clothes are like stained, and it's just like a messy film. And that's I
bet that goes back to the budget. The people that weren't, because there's the people who live in the subway tunnels, and I get the choice of making their clothes kind of sooted and stuff. But then, like, for the cops and everybody, I think that's just because they only had one set of wardrobe. So then the clothes just got dirty over time.
It's also like, we're in mean streets, New York, so everyone has to be filthy. My other less a question, more of a sort of world building. I think that the job that would be perfect for George Cooper to combine his two passions would be to photograph the derelict fashion line from Zoolander.
Yeah, no, for sure. That would, I mean, as long as he felt like it wasn't selling some kind of garbage, and as long as they didn't use his girlfriend as a model, because that made him very upset.
Yeah, that was weird.
That was a very weird scene. So I had two more questions. So one was, so Bosch and the Reverend go to meet with like these government guys,
right?
And to find out what's been happening, and that's when they find out about Chud and how it's the cannibalistic human underground dwellers. So then Daniel Stern, the Reverend, is like, well, you've not seen the last of me. And he's like, I'm getting out of here. And then they send someone to tail him. So Daniel Stern goes to this payphone, and the guy who's tailing him, like, clicks the thing to end the call, so the coin falls down. Did he eat the payphone nickel? Because it looked like he put it in his mouth.
I don't know. Maybe he was like testing it like a gold coin.
No, because it was just a pop in, and then Daniel Stern just kind of looks at him like he's insane, and I would agree, because money is dirty, just full stop, and a coin just like just flinging around through a New York payphone is.
George Cooper will tell you all about how money is bad. Yeah.
And then my other question is this a prequel to the Amazon original series Bosch?
I don't know what that is, so I can't answer.
It stars Titus Welliver. He plays a cop. And also they say the word Bosch approximately 389 times in this.
Yeah.
Like in one scene with the Reverend, he's like, well, Bosch, what do you think it is, Bosch? And then my favorite line of the movie when he says, well, that don't wash, Bosch, because he's doesn't believe what he's saying or something.
Yeah, another question that came up for me is like, so I forgot what his name is. So the toxic waste is put underground and makes these zombies. And the guy who is sort of in charge of that or covering up is this
Wilson, I think is
Wilson,
name.
Yeah. He is so intensely loyal to whatever weird, like mustache twirling evil corporation he's working for, that he's willing to kill, he's willing to die, he's willing to just like do anything.
Yeah, when he gets on the wheel behind the wheel of the van at the end and like and is driving it like he's gonna go run over Bosch.
Right.
I was cracking up because his face was so ridiculous. And then I cracked up even more when the wheel, I know that they've been filling the tunnels with gas.
Right.
But the wheel of this van just kind of clicks into the manhole cover and the van explodes.
Yeah.
It's like a fireball.
Yeah,
there was some very funny moments
as one of the
this.
tropes of like explosions that make no sense.
Yeah, it was pretty great. So what were some of your favorite characters?
Well, like you said before, Daniel Stern's AJ, or the Reverend, they never explained why he's called the Reverend, but he runs like a soup kitchen. He was great. He was totally invested in this part. I don't understand his character. Like, why did his character run a soup kitchen? Was he just like a nice guy?
Yeah.
All right.
He's just helping.
Yeah, I feel like Daniel Stern, there are a bunch of actors like this, but with Home Alone, with a lot of stuff, this is a guy who's just going to commit. If he's going to do a film, he's going to totally commit. And it could be horrible script like this or a good movie, and he's just going to bring his A game, and I like that. It was really funny because I didn't like John Hurd's character very much, but he was also like obviously committed. And then Bosch seemed like this was his first acting job.
I think it was.
Yeah.
I think I read, because he's Chris Curry, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I read that this was his first role. So makes sense.
It was an uneven cast.
It was a trial by fire. Yeah.
Who were your favorite characters? The Chuds?
Well, no, they didn't really have much. There wasn't much there. They were just sort of like big bug-eyed guys. I liked Daniel Stern. He was probably the best part of the movie. I also there was also a guy that disappeared. I thought he was going to be a bigger character. He's like the journalist who's like comes to find Cooper.
Yeah,
and he's like, you take the photos, I'm going to write the article. But then he sort of is jettisoned. Like, I don't...
Yeah,
But they show him kind of skulking around at the beginning, and then he goes and meets up with Cooper in the park, and then he just sort of disappears.
The plot gets a little muddy in, like, the end of the second act.
Basically, once they, like, go to the government guys,
right,
then it's just, like, the government guys versus Bosch and his people.
Yeah, I have some notes for them. They could have tightened this up a little. They could use one more draft. Tropes and cliches, there were a lot. It was sort of... It wasn't quite a zombie movie. It was a good, like, monster movie. Like a sort of non-committal... what kind of monster? Just like a mutant, you know...
Yeah, sort of like just, like a very campy creature feature.
That sort of did things that were like like the blood in the shower kind of made no sense. But
yeah, so when she was poking, she's like, oh, the drain isn't draining. And she's like poking down there with a wire. I kept expecting one of the Chuds to be like, ew, like make a little sound. But instead it was just like a geyser of blood.
Yeah.
I also really liked at the end when... Is it Daniel Stern? Yeah, he's down in the subway tunnels and he like walks in. It's like he walks into a room and they're like raving. They're all sort of just like doing dance moves, and then he like makes a noise and they all turn and see him. I enjoyed that. You already mentioned the explosions that make no sense. Right. One of mine was government malfeasance, which is sort of like, you know, it's kind of like that's how like Godzilla is created. Like that's, you know, that's how what is it? The rage zombies in 28 Days Later. And actually, some of wasn't the zombies in Train to Busan like a government thing or corporation?
It was like a corporation, which is a fun. Like this one too. Like there was some corporate thing as well. Like this was like, I don't think the waste was coming directly from the government. There was
because in the end, Chud also stands for whatever it was, contamination hazard urban disposal.
Right.
And then they're like, you've been dumping this under our streets. Yeah.
There was a pregnant woman, which is, you know, classic.
Yeah.
Train to Busan had a pregnant woman. You know, she wasn't quite there, like she wasn't hobbling and holding her stomach, but...
yeah, because I think she was supposed to be like 8 weeks pregnant or something. She was like it was, you know.
Mutants, which I feel like, happens in a few different horror and sci-fi movies. It's a basic misunderstanding of how radiation affects the human body. But usually you just get sick and die.
Just watch HBO's Chernobyl miniseries, and you will get a full background on what it does.
It's part of the Chud universe, yeah.
And very intense visuals of what it does, so you are forewarned.
Do you have any sort of like 6 degrees or?
I've got some. I've got 6 of them.
Well, speaking of
just 6 degrees,
interconnected stories, Stephanie, will you take us on a journey of 6 degrees of Chud
cinema? Yes, this is the 6 degrees of Chud cinema. So Kim Dreist, who plays Lauren, I believe her name is, Cooper's girlfriend. So she was in Manhunter, the Michael Mann Hannibal Lecter movie, which also starred Brian Cox as Hannibal. Brian Cox is currently starring in Succession, and his co-star is Fisher Stevens. Fisher Stevens famously was in Hackers.
Yeah.
Classic film. He shared some amazing scenes in Hackers with Lorraine Bracco. And Lorraine Bracco was in Goodfellas, probably her best known role. Maybe Dr. Melfi, but arguable. And Michael Imperioli was in Goodfellas. He played Spider. And then he went on to star in Sopranos, which also starred John Hurd in a kind of mini arc.
Yeah.
I think it's season 1 or 2. So
yeah, that was a real journey into mob cinema. I enjoyed it.
So what is your pitch of the week to bring the Chudiverse into the 21st century?
Yeah, well, the fact that it took place in such a hip part of New York really captured my imagination. And I thought, there's a whole aspect of Three's Company where they're kind of trying to hide the fact that they're living together, and so Jack Tripper plays gay for much comic effect. Well, I thought a group of college friends get an apartment in Soho or Chelsea, and there'll be all different kind. There'll be like the sassy gay friend, the intense artist friend, the uptight, straight-laced friend. And they're not supposed to have so many people living in this little apartment, and maybe they have a mean landlord who's always threatening to kick them out. And then suddenly they have another person living here, a radioactive mutant who pops up in the basement and starts living in their closet. Oh, that Chud. And so, it'd be kind of like a cross between Girls and Two Broke Girls and Golden Girls and the Toxic Avenger.
Clearly they didn't check off the Chuds Allowed box on Street Easy when they were looking for this apartment.
Yeah, and it could be a real social commentary on the oppression that Chuds and other people experiencing violent mutations experience in America.
Well, on that note, why don't we get to the horrible idea?
Yeah.
What is the horrible idea, Jack?
Capitalism, man. It's bad news.
Yeah, I basically felt like it was sort of like, really, it was just like, look at these weird monsters. But if we're giving the movie some credit, I think it's, how government corporations exploit the most vulnerable among us.
Yeah, the military-industrial complex. And
it's not until some, middle-class white lady is harmed that an investigation actually starts.
It's true. A very strangely, well, I guess not strangely, a very problematically white movie.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think the only black actor I saw was the guy with the flamethrower.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know, that seems like a kind of a cool role. You get to, fucking fire off a flamethrower. He didn't have any lines, really, though. But also, I don't know, I don't think anyone is looking back on this man, I really, should have gotten that role in Chud.
It is especially, apparent to me, or, it looks especially weird to me to not have people of color in a movie about, Soho and Chelsea, because it's a pretty diverse.
Well, just New York.
Yeah, New York in general. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, final reactions.
Yeah. So, I think this lived up to my expectations. I was expecting kind of a dumb creature feature thing with, that was from the 80s. It was not scary.
No.
The creatures look comical. They kind of look like if Admiral Akbar died and was left out on a beach somewhere for too long.
I was thinking a little bit about
this
Chunk from the Goonies. If they just went a little further with Chunk's look.
Yeah, it was, so they weren't scary, but it was funny. There were some really great actors in this.
Yeah.
Actors who went on to do really great stuff. This was not their finest work, but entertaining nonetheless. And I found out both meanings of Chud. Also, it served as a great prequel to the Boschiverse.
Indeed.
So I'm giving it a 1 out of 10 for scare factor and that 1 is just for the scene with the dog.
Oh.
And then the entertainment factor, I give it a 6. There were a couple places where it dragged, but it was fun enough. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I judge a lot of it was successful in most of the things it was trying to be. And there is something, I think, like Johnny Depp in Nightmare on Elm Street and a couple of other Halloween with remind me of her name from Halloween.
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Jamie Lee Curtis. Sometimes you get these movies with kind of rough scripts with really good actors who are sort of trying really to draw blood from a stone. Sometimes literally.
Yeah. Kevin Bacon in
Kevin Bacon.
Friday the 13th. Yeah.
So yeah, scare factor, I'll give it a 0. Entertainment factor, I will, same as you, give it a 6. It was fun. And, it was like a good sort of after school watch.
Yeah, I don't feel like it's going to stick with me in either a good or a bad way. It was just fun to watch. And only about an hour and a half long, which, as you know, I love.
Yeah, well, I think next week we're going in a much stranger direction.
It is also a sci-fi horror film, but
absolutely.
I think it's going to be quite different. Yes,
it is. We're going back into the cage with 2019's Nick Cage starring and Richard Stanley directing the sci-fi horror flick Color Out of Space, the love from the Lovecraft short story.
Yeah. This is, fun fact, would have been my last movie in theaters before COVID, but I had to cancel for some reason, and it ended up being Portrait of a Woman on Fire.
Oh.
Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
Which we probably won't do on this podcast, but we'll see.
Unless we want to talk about the horror of, homophobia, but
or lesbianism, the horror of lesbianism.
Hey, speak for yourself.
Review us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, wherever you listen to podcasts that let you review them. You can review us. Don't be scared.
And please do.
Please do. We'd enjoy that.
And if you have any interesting facts, hot takes, tidbits we got wrong, funny insults, you can hit us up on Twitter or email us at thehorribleidea@gmail.com. And we're also on Instagram at thehorribleidea.
Yeah. Tell us what you think CHUD stands for and what you stand for.
Corny hosts under duress.
Wow. We want you to feel heard. John heard. Peace out.
Don't wash, Bosch.